Well, hello, you fabulous interior design professional. I'm so glad you're here. This is Business of Design. You are definitely in the right place. You're going to meet someone amazing today who's got the most beautiful accent. Sam Trattles is from Australia, and I was introduced to her by a Business of Design boss member, Anna Karen. I struggled during the actual interview to figure out who introduced me to Sam, but she reminds me at the end of the episode who it was. So thank you to Anna Karen for suggesting this. Sam is an advocate for embracing what negotiating can unlock. And turns out we negotiate all day long. 35,000 decisions a day we're making. And many of those negotiations, I didn't even consider the fact that I negotiate with myself all the time. I'm going to go to the gym after I do this thing, or I'm not going to go to the gym until I do this thing, whatever. So interesting to have that conversation with her. The title of this episode, 383, 15 Seconds of Awkwardness with Sam Trattles. And that refers to a tip she's giving us during the show where she talks about that awkward moment where you state your case. You say no, or you state your fee, or you ask for the big deposit at the presentation, and then you have to stop talking. And as you know, I've shared a million times, I sit on my hands as a reminder that it's not my turn to talk and I need to wait for the response of the client sitting across from me. Well, Sam says that awkwardness never lasts more than 15 seconds. So if you can just train yourself to be quiet and sit still for 15 seconds, you can be more successful at negotiating. And I did have an opportunity this week with real life clients to test this out. Lovely clients. We presented most of their house to them at the presentation. They love everything. They simply can't afford it, or they don't want to afford it right now. We're finding that a lot with clients. They're saying, let's break it into phases, which is, not as much fun as it was during COVID when it was do the whole house top to bottom. But anyway, she had this idea that she was going to do a little in the living room and a little in the, I love the thumbs up symbol that just happened on my video there. A little in the living room, little in the dining room, a little bit in the primary bedroom upstairs, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to have a meeting with her and say that is a very bad approach. We are the fourth interior design professional she's had in this house. That is really sad. I can see that some of the work that's been done is lovely, but the place is a mess because it's four different people's ideas, but nobody gets to finish. And you might think, why on earth would you be willing to take a job where you're the fourth? Well, she is a good friend of one of my best clients. And according to my client and to this new client, the reason they didn't hire me is because I was expensive and they were afraid that I was going to be too expensive. So they went through this process, really painful process of these four designers and didn't get what they needed. And now I'm up to bat and I want to make sure I'm going to do it differently. And so I had to have a meeting with her this week and say, that's not how you should spend your money. I want to see you. This is what I was able to say to her. And this is thanks to the podcast. I said, I want to see you turn the key on your door at night and walk through the front door and think, oh my gosh, I love my house. And so I talked her into doing living room, dining room, the bar area, and the great room. And that's it. Leave everything else alone. It was a hard sell. But I really pushed hard and they did turn around after 15 seconds and say, okay, we'll do it your way. And I'm so happy. It takes courage to do this work, right? It is so much easier just to acquiesce to whatever our clients want and get along and make them happy. But I know that that's not the best way in the long term to make them happy. So this conversation about negotiating, really, really good. Sam Trattles, the other side of the table.com.au. And she's got a couple of books she's going to tell you about, which are available for sale. And I think Cheryl may even have an announcement that we might be giving some of them away. So good conversation and just really healthy reminders about how to stay strong and own your expertise and ask for what you need, and even some tips on how to renegotiate. When you feel like you've made a bad deal, can you go back and renegotiate? The answer is yes. I find that hard to do, but I haven't had a lot of practice at it. So I will do some more practicing and let you know how it goes. Really glad you're here. Let's hear from Cheryl Horn, and then we'll get on with the show.
Thanks, Kimberly. Well, we do have a book giveaway coming up as part of our next BOD Live meeting. That's happening on Wednesday, July 24th at 8 p.m. EST. And we are doing this to accommodate our Australian members. So for them, it's going to be Thursday, July 25th at 10 a.m. We're so excited. Every once in a while, we do get an Australian member joining our BOD live meetings, and it's like the middle of the night for them. So once in a while, we do try and do an evening time slot to accommodate. So we would love to see you on there. And in celebration of this episode, and that Sam was recommended by one of our Australian members, we're going to give away 2 of her books during that meeting. So I hope you can join us. The book is Negotiate Your Worth. As a business owner, negotiating your worth with confidence is essential to the growth of your business. So thank you, Sam, for agreeing to give away 2 of those books to 2 of our members at that meeting. Now we're going to do open coaching. So for those of you who can't attend our regular BOD live meetings, the recordings are available to you within your membership. Please go through and listen to some of those recordings in advance of our next meeting and have your questions answered. I know we received a lot of inquiries about the hybrid model that we just covered at our last BOD live meeting. So I know that there's going to be more questions about that one. But of course, any of our programming at Business of Design, we want to make sure that you're implementing. We want to make sure that you're taking action. And this is your opportunity to ask us if there's anywhere in your business that you're struggling, what you need to tackle next, or if there's a portion of the learnings that you are struggling to implement. We want to help you do that. Implementing really is 80% of what you need to do when you're a Business of Design member. Learning and taking the courses is just 20%. So make sure that you're taking action and you're implementing. And of course, we are here to support you doing that. We also want to invite you to join us at High Point Market on October 26th. Join us in partnership with High Point, Antmore, and Daniel House Club as we celebrate 20 years of Business of Design. Details on both of these are available at businessofdesign.com. Thanks so much.
I have been looking forward to this conversation. I first heard your name, Sam, when I was in Sydney with the BOD Boss Group, and they described you as someone they used to learn how to negotiate better. And initially I thought, well, I don't really need to negotiate with anybody. And then I thought, wait a minute. You negotiate every day for all kinds of things, but especially at work. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think from the time we hear the alarm go off and decide whether we're going to snooze or not, that's when the negotiations start, whether it's with ourselves, with our children, with our partner, and then, and so on from there. If we're making an average of 35,000 decisions every day, how many of those are negotiations and how many of those are we actually participating in or letting go past us?
Okay, never even occurred to me about the self-negotiation, which I'm just pretty suck at. And I didn't realize 35,000 decisions a day. No wonder I'm tired.
That's right. And if you have children, how many decisions are you helping them make? So kids generally have around 7,000 decisions a day, and often parents will help them make some of those decisions as well. So it's exhausting.
It is. And I've heard of decision fatigue, but I never really thought I suffered from it. I tend to make decisions fairly quickly, but that's not always good either. I tend to just make a decision to get it done instead of, wait a minute, I might need some extra backup and some extra help here and a better position to come at this problem from. I tend to be very quick. So just tell us the basic premise of why negotiating is important. And for the most part, we're kind of focused on work, and we're all interior design professionals. So why is negotiating important to us?
I think, well, you raised that their decision fatigue is a real situation. It's a real challenge at the moment because there's a backdrop of fear and there's a backdrop of, existential crisis and all these things going on in the background, which are elevating our stress levels. So when we actually go, hang on, how do I go about making decisions? And how do because delegation was the old term, really. How do we empower people to actually be able to support us by taking some of those decisions off us? And I think it's interesting when you look at when Barack Obama was in the White House, his chief of staff was here in Australia last year, and she talked about process was the way that they survived. So how do you make a decision? We have a process for whether it gets escalated to who, by when, all those types of things. So within our own small businesses, or some bigger, how do we make decisions and how do we help each other through that process? What do we know what each other likes to have commentary on and what we don't? And then what is our approach to that as a team? Even if we're a solopreneur, there's still people around us who can help us make decisions, whether that's our accountant, our partner, our friends, our business friends. What's our process for getting the support we need to make those decisions efficiently? But also, we don't want to just be led by the heart. What is the decision that's right for the business? What's right for my clients? And then if I had a board of directors, what would they say that they needed me to deliver on as a business, particularly in this economic climate? It's pretty tough at the moment.
Yeah, I guess that's something else that we could talk about for sure. So set us up because you're so right. Most of us don't have a board of directors. In fact, it's funny, the BOD boss groups, we refer to them as your board of directors, literally a group of people that you can go to get sage and sound advice. But even if you don't have that, what are the steps we can take as we begin to make those important decisions to make stronger decisions, not waffle? I guess those are two different things, right? One's a strong decision, the other one's like stick to what you decided you were going to do.
Yeah, I think this is a thing that a lot of business owners are challenged by, particularly when we're creative. That's really hard because we want to be creative. We don't want to be business owners, but we've chosen this path. So there is a point where we say, okay, what structures need to be put into place in my business? Do we know exactly who our ideal client is? Not everybody is our ideal client. And then what are the types of things that they would typically say to us? If you're the bottom end of the market going for volume and lower rates, then you're going to have to expect that people will say, oh, that's pretty expensive. So those comments, we can, instead of getting annoyed by them, we can actually prepare for them and think, oh, okay, well, when somebody says that, it's like, oh, okay, well, what did you expect it was going to cost? And talk them through that, because it's an educational piece we have to do rather than being about objections and overcoming them. It's actually, how often do you do a renovation of your house or redesign something? You need to be taken through that experience of understanding, oh, that's what it costs, and inviting them to do their own research. So I think there's something in it for ourselves to go, okay, what will I say when they push back on me?
Should we be thinking, it sounds like, I love that you started with ideal client. It sounds like you're suggesting we might even anticipate what the client's objections, conditions, biggest needs. Is that the starting point of any negotiation, that you're sort of anticipating what might come up so you're ready to handle it?
Well, I think the start of every negotiation is with ourselves. What do we want? What don't we want? And why is that appropriate? So really having that down, whether it's a rate card, whether it's how we articulate what our value is that we deliver to clients, knowing what our differentiators are and how we articulate it. So always start inside first. And then it's about, okay, if I know who I'm talking to and I know, all those pieces are in the right place, then I can say, right, okay, cool. I know that they're probably going to say these things. And so, yeah, absolutely. Then think about it as, what's my education process for my ideal client? And how do I weed out the ones that are just not my ideal client and say, you know what, thanks for the interest in our business. I think you should look at going and talking to blah, blah company because that's really up their street.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's probably really hard for most creative professionals to make those early decisions and narrow down the field of who they want to attract. Like, the fear is, if I limit the number of clients who reach out to me, I'll limit my opportunities, when in fact, narrowing it down and figuring out who your ideal client is means you can really focus on convincing that one type of person to do the thing you want them to do and be more successful. But it's a hard sell to creative professionals to do that, isn't it?
I think about it like friends. When I was younger, I wanted to be friends with everybody. Now I know, no, I need less friends, better quality friendships. I need to put more effort into, I can't spread myself that thin. So the same with clients. Unless you have a product that is mass produced, say a pair of socks, then you can't be friends with everybody. So, and it's too exhausting. So finding out who is your, who's your friends, and what do they say and what don't they say? And I think, because when we've all had those clients where, you've taken a job, especially during COVID, I took jobs that I did not want. And specifically during doing them, I was like, I hate the world. I hate doing this job. I don't like this client, but I need the money. And you
Yeah.
don't want that to be our default. We had to do that, and that's fine. And we sometimes when we're starting out in business, absolutely, we have to work with clients we don't like. But taking the lesson that is, oh, I don't like those types of clients. Cool. I'll just redo my ideal client profile and then start again. So I know something more about them. So I don't know whether it's too hard. I think it's about going, let's identify one client I love working with and build our client profile or avatar around that person.
What do you say to that person who says, though, oh, I love everybody. I love doing small renovations and big decorating jobs, and I love doing a build, and I love doing styling, and I don't want to limit myself. I don't want to say no to anything, you know? What are the advantages of being more discerning, I guess, and putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is who I am, and this is what I want?
Yeah, I think it's about, well, the first thing I'd say to that person is, how tired are you?
Right? For sure. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna apologize in advance when I say this, but I always th say think about a sex provider. Do you, you know, you want to do a lot of clients every night, or do you want to go on one really nice exclusive date? Well, you might make the same amount of money, or you might make more with one client instead of dozens and dozens of clients. Okay, you keep going.
Yeah, no, I totally. Well, that's random. I haven't heard that one before, but I just recently was watching. There's the negotiation scene in Pretty Woman where she's in the bath and he comes and says, "I want you to be with me for a week." And I did a bunch of analysis on how much and what decisions would he have had to make before he made the offer. So he obviously knew how much yet to offer her based on how much it was for that first night. And then, he needed to buy her clothes and the dinners and ignoring the fact that he's a billionaire, but there's actually something in it. And then for her, it's like, wow, the opportunity cost. Do I stand on the corner and hope that I can get enough money by staying there? Or do I take the hit and go for a cheaper rate and say, yes, this is a great opportunity? So we all know how that ended.
Wait, no, I can't remember. I mean, I sort of remember the bathtub scene. My mother loved that movie, so it's dear in my heart because I remember how delighted she was. But does Julia Roberts negotiate with Richard Gere? Does she hold her own in the negotiation, even though she has less power?
She does. Yeah, she does. She ends up saying, they do a calculation and we don't want to do a cost per hour, but the actual calculation of like the opportunity to, here's 6 days worth of work, or do I go back onto the street? I think that's where you go, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, she did negotiate with him. And then at the end, it's a really lovely clip because at the end they go out and she said, I would have done it for this. And he said, I would have done it for that. So yeah, it's
That's
very
cute.
nice part of
What
it.
are the mistakes we make in general as we go into negotiations? And I suppose we negotiate well, I think I never negotiate about my rate. I don't negotiate my rate, but some people do. But you might be asked to negotiate on some of the things you're proposing, some of the selections you make. Can we do it the same wallpaper but cheaper? Can we have, I want the same exact look, but I want less expensive. Like, what are some of the mistakes we make as we're heading into those kinds of negotiations?
I think the first one I'd say is probably not being prepared. So I talk about 70% of your effort is in preparation. Effort being, if it's significant, it's longer. It's not a time thing. It's what you need to feel more confident. So do you assume that people will want option A, B, and C? And do you know the answers to those questions? Because often we'll be flat-footed and go, and start trying to make it up. And it's like, no, if I don't know, I don't know. So that preparation really helps with that. And I think the next thing is not knowing how to say no. We if we aren't really sure on our rates, that's a bit of a problem. So if we are sure on them, then we need to say, okay, well, how do I say no to someone in Australia? People are very gentle and kind, and we'd like to be liked. And that is a bit of a challenge when we're negotiating, because if you say no to somebody, then they might not like you. It's not that, it's business. So we need to be in that position where we know what we're going to say when they ask for those things. So really, in any situation, there's often three answers. If we're asking for something, there's three answers: yes, no, or maybe. So when someone's coming to us, we need to be ready for, okay, yes, no, or maybe. There's different kinds of wallpaper: yes, no, maybe. So and then where it comes unstuck is that next thing. So what do people say once you've said no? What happens next? And that's the awkwardness. So we need to be prepared for the second round of conversation when someone says yes, no, or maybe, and particularly when we are the person saying that commentary as well. So I think that's where the tension is. It's not being prepared. And I can think on my feet all you like, and I know some people can't think on their feet and don't want to. So don't change who you are, but just play to those strengths. And I think having the answers to those three questions, having the next round of thought, that's where the power is in terms of really reducing the stress and having more confidence at the same time.
One thing I'm going to take away from this conversation is this idea of the awkwardness of a negotiation. Even when I'm prepared and even when I feel confident that I know what I'm going to say, there's still that awkwardness. And everybody who listens to the podcast knows I have a strategy. I sit on my hands, which means shut up. Don't say another word. Let the other person speak. Don't negotiate with yourself, right? Because that's what we do. We say, well, normally it's this. But okay, maybe I could do it for that, right? That's negotiating with yourself. So even sometimes if you're successful at negotiating, you have to get comfortable dealing with awkward.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is. And I have a tactic for that. One of my favorite tactics. Because we do absolutely negotiate with ourselves, which is a shame. So what I worked out was that the gift of time is what helps us in that situation. So no matter what it is that you're putting to the table, if it's a no, if it's a here's the number, if it's a we can't do that, or whatever the response is, whatever you're delivering, you need to give that other person the opportunity to hear it. So we give them time to think, oh, what has she just said to me? What is my options? How could I possibly respond to that? She's looking at me. I need to say something. So that's 8 seconds so far. So I talk about 15 seconds of pain. If you're quiet for 15 seconds, if the other person across the other side can last 15 seconds when you're not saying anything, then tell me, because we know there's only two kinds of people who can handle that, and that's farmers who have time. And military people often will have the patience for it. So it's really just a small amount of time that all you have to do is say what your thing is, the money or the whatever it is, and say, right, okay, I'll leave that with you, Kimberley. Writing notes on your notepad, and then if they haven't said anything, it's like, oh, so what do you think?
15 seconds. Really, that's it. It feels like an eternity sometimes. I'm kind of stunned to hear 15 seconds. And there's just an overwhelming, and I think a lot of creative professionals will relate to what you said about Aussies, that they want people to like them. In my experience, creative professionals just want clients to like them. And so there's this just a deep desire to take the discomfort away from the client by opening my mouth, which is going to mean I'm going to lose the negotiation, which I don't want to do. And often I don't want to lose the negotiation because what I'm proposing is better for the client.
Yes.
We just had a client and we did a big proposal and they just don't have enough money to do it all. That's something we're running into, which we didn't run into COVID. In COVID, it was like, okay, we'll do everything. We don't care. Life's too short. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? But now we're seeing people say, wait a minute, maybe we'll break this into 5 phases kind of thing, which is insane. And I had a client who wanted to do a little bit in this room and a little bit in that room and a little more in another room. And I said, no, we need to have a meeting. So we had a meeting and I said, that's not the right way to spend your money. And here's what I propose, which was very different than what she wanted. And she actually said she needed a couple days to think about it. And then she came back and said she was okay with what I proposed. But the discomfort of not having someone immediately agree with you it's really big. It's really big. And I understand the knee-jerk reaction to like make it go away by meeting them halfway or agreeing to whatever they want.
Yeah, we need to not guess. So these are personal decisions. We're working in people's homes, and they are so important because it can change the way we live and love in our houses and workspaces. So I think that it's about exactly that. They are worth it. So why am I not worth it? why am I not worth holding my own for what the work that I do and the brilliance that I bring? And so that's, yes, that has some tension. We sell our creativity, we sell our minds. So there's a damn imposter syndrome on your shoulder. It's kind of like, go away and just let me be the expert that I am. And I know how to create beautiful spaces, but I also know that there's a realistic situation at the moment that people are doing it tough. So I need to be patient. I need to think about, okay, what do I think? If they're going to cut it into 55 pieces, then that just seems crazy because they'll ultimately spend more money. So I can go, well, that's okay. But actually, I know because I've done this how many times before. So let me hold the hand of the client and educate them through that experience. So absolutely. I mean, you're in a partnership with a client. It's not like it's transactional. It's actually, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to work really closely together and possibly we'll become friends. And so why don't we build this relationship from the beginning as we mean to go on? So yes, it's scary, but also you need to back yourself. And that's why you need your board of directors. That's why you need them to say, oh my God, I'm freaking out. What do I do? And then have them pep you up. And so you can get rid of that annoying woman on your shoulder who tells you stuff that's not true. So I think it is hard.
I love that you gave us the practical 15-second tip. Are there other tips that we could just keep in the back pocket for, those negotiating needs?
I think it's one of the ones that when you were talking before, we think that the opportunity is, write up a scope of work and it's going to cost this much and it take this time and da. And when someone says, when they blatantly just want a reduced price, how do we say no to them? Right. And I think that's really important to know. In my second book, I talk about, finding many different ways to say no, no, thank you, no, but, no, and, no, this, no, that. And it's really, really important to note down what are the ways that work for you to say no to somebody. And first of all, I've had many clients who I could see, you could tell they were just in it for trying to reduce the price. And I said, absolutely, I'm happy to work to your budget. We'll just have to work out what we can take out to align with your budget so we can work from there. And it's just a little piece that pushes them into the place that I know what I'm worth, but I'm also saying I'm flexible. So that's my choice.
I love that. We can memorize that. What would you like us to take out so we can meet your budget? What are we going to let go of so you can meet your budget? Because that's when you meet that person, I think they're pretty rare, but when you meet that person who just wants a deal, that's sort of the sobering language you can use to get them to be aware that that's just not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you meet somebody, you go, I like them, but they want to have a deal. I have one client who, oh my gosh, I love him, but every time we contract renegotiate, every time I know it's going to be difficult and I hate working with him during that phase. And so now I've learned over the years of working with him, it's like, okay, well, I start with a higher number because I know that he wants me to go down. And that way it's easy because then I give him the win that his ego needs and we all go on happily and move into the nice part of working together.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Sam, tell me, I know you have 2 books. Tell us the title and what both of them is about.
And the first one is called I Love Negotiating. And that was really...
That's fiction, right?
Well, it's got hate crossed out on the front cover. And that's really that was about what I didn't know that people didn't know. So I thought everyone knew how to negotiate and I just sort of stumbled upon it late or something to that effect. So I had done 20 years in corporate negotiating sponsorship deals and was very privileged, spent millions of dollars, millions of other people's dollars, and just didn't know that there was a process for it. And that was what I learned through that experience. And then, that was my first endeavor. I didn't really ever think I would write a book. And then my COVID project was to write a book that I had wished someone had given me on my first day as a business owner. And that is a very different pursuit because the average person talks about money and their worth probably once a year, whereas we talk about it every day with our client conversations. So how do we go about that? So it was really It was challenging because I needed to ask a lot of questions of myself about, how many times have I actually rolled over when a client has pushed me on money, and how do I build a process that works? So to make it fun, because it was COVID, I mapped out those 8 attributes of powerful negotiators. And then I thought, oh, I know, I'll try and find something that's aligned to those. So I aligned them to Australian animals. And for example, emus are very curious animals, and being a good negotiator means you need to be curious and ask good questions. So the big red kangaroo, which are the big ones that do the boxing,
Right.
they are the true entrepreneurs. They lead the mob. They absolutely trailblazers, but they also have that spidey sense where they're like, oh, something's not right. We need to go. So that's about being really in tune to knowing when to walk away from things and so on. So yeah, and wombats are incredible at knowing and marking their territory and boundaries. So they're the ones who help you say no.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. What's book number 2 called?
It's called Negotiate Your Worth.
Negotiate Your Worth. I know that that's the book that was recommended to me. And I think it was Mary Lou Sobel who recommended it, but it could have been Brooke Aitken. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
One of them. So I have to say thank you to both of them. You said something that made me think I have to ask. How do you go back to a client when you've agreed to something you shouldn't have agreed to? Can you renegotiate a deal because you realize you made a bad choice? I really struggle with that.
Yeah, great question. I absolutely think we could always renegotiate. I tend to, in the first instance, will always sleep on something before I actually sign a contract of any kind, because I know if I wake up the next day and I'm like, there's something not right. And so many times I've gone back to someone and said, I slept on it, and I just feel like this part of the deal needs to be discussed further. And that other person, so many times that other person says, yeah, you know what? I agree. So it's usually where there's ambiguity, or it's where there's ambiguity or there's a bit of tension there. Whenever there's a bit of tension, it's not made up. And most of the time people get it. They are actually attuned to it as well. So in the first instance, do that, sleep on it, and then have that discussion. And then when we've got down the road and we're at, changes to the contracts and whatnot, we can suck it up and take the hit ourselves, but we know that we're working for free. So does our client want us to work for free? I don't think so. I don't think they think that's fair. So why do we feel so uncomfortable to go back and have that discussion? So I think it's about maybe thinking about what is it within you that is a tell. So for me, when I've over serviced a client, when their name comes up on my phone, I'm like, oh, that's for me. It's like, oh, it's time to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because that rung me 478 times that week, and I've kind of had enough of that. So we either need to change the process of engagement, or we need to change the pricing because they want more hands-on. So maybe we need to meet once a day or whatever it is through the project. So changing things so that it's evident that, okay, if there's a change, it's significant to the way we're going to work, then we're probably going to have to talk about money as well.
Okay, interesting. I love that. Okay, everybody, if you're driving in the car right now, don't worry about writing down the names of the books. Everything will be available at businessofdesign.com. And at the beginning of the show, just so you know, Sam, I told everybody your bio and gave them your Instagram handle and all that kind of stuff. So again, all those notes are in the show notes. Sam, we like to end every episode with something we call design intervention, which is just a great piece of business advice. It doesn't have to be on topic, doesn't have to be about negotiating. It could be just wonderful business advice that you live by or someone gave you.
Ooh. Well, my favorite thing is to hasten slowly. I feel like I got told it in my very first job, and I still endeavor to try and live by the addict of hasten slowly. So I'm not very good at it still. I normally just run at things. But
That's me.
process, yeah, but it's so important. It's such sage advice, because stand back, have a look at what's going on, and do that every 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, particularly in business, and then go, we thought we were going down this path, but actually the path has changed and I don't like that path, so I want to go a different way, or something's happened that makes me think, oh, that's not the way I want to go, or the market's changed, or the economy's changed, or something's changed. Because I think if I hadn't followed that process of taking a step back, I would be so stubborn and so stoic that I was like, no, I said I was going to do that, so I should do that.
Right? Yeah.
So that opportunity to say, hang on a minute, yeah, we tried that. Being in business is an experiment. So we just need to slow down a little bit to be able to run at things as well. So
Slow your roll and you'll get further. I love that. Sam, thank you so much. I know it's morning in Australia. You have a full day ahead of you. I'm going to put my pajamas on after this, but it was a great conversation, and hopefully you'll come back on the podcast again. And I am going to get my hand on the books. I've just been traveling a ton. Normally I would have read them before the interview, but that's okay. You've piqued my curiosity, and I'm definitely going to get my hands on them now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Bye for now.